You notice it first in small moments. A trash bag splits before it even makes it to the outside bin. A paper towel smears instead of absorbs. Dish soap runs out twice as fast as it used to. A coffee maker that should have lasted years starts failing after a few months. And after enough of those moments, a strange question starts lingering in the background of ordinary life. Am I imagining this? Or did everyday products actually get worse? Across America, millions of people have that same feeling right now. And for a long time, many blame themselves before they blame the products. Maybe I used too much. Maybe I washed it wrong. Maybe I bought the wrong brand. But the deeper pattern is much bigger than personal discipline. The system changed slowly, quietly, and in ways that were easy to miss while it was happening. This is no longer just about inflation. It is about durability inflation, quality inflation, and replacement inflation. Products cost more, last less, and work worse. The package still looks familiar. The brand still signals trust. But once the product gets home, it feels thinner, weaker, smaller, or strangely temporary. And because the change happened step by step, many people adapted before they fully realized what they were adapting to. That is why this matters. When ordinary household products become less reliable, the cost is not just on the receipt. It shows up in frustration, in repeated purchases, and in the slow loss of confidence that comes from never quite knowing whether a basic item will do its job. But once you see the pattern, something shifts. You stop treating each disappointment like a random annoyance, and you start recognizing the system underneath it. Take trash bags. This is one of the clearest examples because the downgrade is physical. You can feel it in your hands. Bags that once had some stretch now split at the seam, tear around sharp corners, or leak from the bottom without warning. And what usually happens next? People adapt without even thinking. They double bag. They carry lighter loads. They avoid overfilling. They blame the shape of the can, the weight of the trash, or the way they lifted it. But in many cases, the real change is simpler. The material got thinner while the packaging stayed convincing. The box may still look the same size. The branding may still use words like strong, flex, stretch, or heavy duty. Yet the amount of material in each bag has often been reduced just enough that the weakness shows up in daily use, not on the shelf. That matters because the hidden cost is not just one torn bag. It is the chain reaction. More mess, more cleanup. More bags used for the same job. Sometimes more brand switching, which usually means paying more in the hope that a premium label will restore what used to be standard quality. The control shift here is simple. Stop judging these products by the front of the box. Pay attention to whether a bag can handle normal household use without forcing you to compensate for it. If you are adjusting your behavior to protect the product is no longer doing its job. Paper towels and toilet paper followed a similar path, but in a more deceptive way because the package language became part of the illusion. Mega roll, family size, double roll, super absorbent. Those phrases create a feeling of abundance even when the actual usable material keeps shrinking. The roll may look large because the cardboard tube is bigger, the sheets are narrower, or the paper is wound differently. In the bathroom or kitchen, what people notice instead is that they are reaching for more. The paper feels thinner. The absorbency drops. One sheet becomes 2, then 3. A spill that used to take a quick wipe now takes a small handful. Toilet paper that once felt sturdy suddenly shreds, forcing people to use more to get the same result. So even when the package claims value, the real usage pattern tells a different story. The product moves through the house faster. This is one of the easiest quality reductions for manufacturers because the downgrade hides inside behavior. Consumers rarely sit down and calculate how many extra sheets they are using each week. They just notice that the roll disappears sooner. And because the package still signals plenty, the decline feels vague instead of obvious. The practical way to take back control is to pay attention to performance per use, not branding per roll. A lower shelf price means very little if the product requires more material every time you touch it. The same pattern keeps showing up. Products are designed to preserve the appearance of value while quietly reducing function. Then there are dish soaps and cleaning products, where the downgrade can feel almost psychological at first. You pump the soap, wash the dishes, and somehow it seems like you need more. The spray bottle looks the same. The scent may even be stronger. But the actual cleaning power feels softer, flatter, or more diluted. Many people respond the same way without realizing it. They squeeze longer. They spray more often. They make a second pass. That adaptation is the story. Once performance drops, consumers make up the difference with quantity. A soap that used to need one small squeeze now takes two or three. A kitchen spray that once cut through grease now smears until you use extra product or scrub harder. Laundry and cleaning formulas have also been affected by this shift in some brands, where concentration appears weaker or effectiveness feels less consistent from one bottle to the next. And again, the financial pressure stays hidden because the bottle itself may not look dramatically different. If anything, the packaging often becomes more polished. Better colors, better cap design, better fragrance language. But appearance is not performance. The control shift here is to watch your own behavior. If you are subconsciously using more product than you used to, that is information. It tells you the formula may have changed, even if the label never says so. Once you start noticing that pattern, you stop assuming the problem is your memory or your standards. You start measuring products by how efficiently they actually work in the real world. Small appliances may be the category where this shift feels most insulting, because people still buy them with the expectation of usefulness, not disposability. Coffee makers, toasters, blenders, microwaves, vacuums. These are not novelty items. They are part of the basic functioning of a home. And yet more and more consumers have had the same experience. The appliance works just long enough to feel normal, then starts failing suspiciously close to the end of the warranty period. A button stops responding. The motor sounds strained. A heating element weakens. A plastic hinge cracks. The machine still looks modern enough on the counter, but it no longer performs like a durable household tool. In many cases, it was not built to. Modern manufacturing has become extremely efficient at producing lightweight, attractive appliances at a lower cost. But that efficiency often comes with thinner internal components, more plastic stress points, and designs that are difficult or impossible to repair economically. So the product becomes semi-disposable. Not officially disposable, of course. But functionally, yes. Repair often costs too much compared to replacement. Parts are hard to source. Warranty coverage is limited, and the consumer gets pushed into the replacement cycle whether they wanted it or not. This is where awareness becomes protection. A low upfront price can hide a short working life. A familiar brand name no longer guarantees durability. And if an appliance category seems to be failing faster across multiple brands, that is not bad luck. It is usually a signal that the category itself has been redesigned around shorter replacement cycles. Clothing has gone through its own quiet collapse, and older consumers often feel this immediately because they have a longer memory for what ordinary clothing used to feel like. Not luxury clothing. Ordinary clothing. T-shirts that held their shape. Jeans that lasted years. Sweaters with some weight to them. Seams that stayed closed. Colors that stayed put. Now a lot of clothing feels temporary. Fabrics are thinner. Stitching is weaker. Items twist after washing, fade quickly, pill early, or shrink in ways that make them feel worn out long before they should. Synthetic blends are often used more heavily because they are cheaper to produce and easier to scale. But the trade-off can be lower comfort, lower durability, and a shorter useful life. What makes this especially frustrating is that the visual presentation can still look respectable in the store. Good lighting, clean folding, strong color, maybe even a familiar brand. But once the item enters regular use, the weakness reveals itself fast. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is just a steady decline in feel. Less structure, less softness, less confidence that the item will still look decent after a normal season of wear. The control shift here is not perfection. It is refusing to be misled by first impression alone. Clothing that cannot survive basic washing and repeat wear is not a good value just because the purchase price was low. The hidden pattern is becoming clearer. If the product only has to look good briefly, companies can reduce what happens underneath that first impression. Furniture and home goods changed in much the same way. Many people do not think about this until a drawer starts sagging, a table wobbles, a shelf bows, or a chair loosens far earlier than expected. The shift from heavier solid materials toward lighter engineered panels, particle board, thin veneers, and flat pack design made furniture easier to ship and cheaper to manufacture. It also made much of it less durable in everyday life. That does not mean all modern furniture is bad, but it does mean the baseline changed. Pieces that used to stay in a home for years or even decades are now often treated like medium-term placeholders. Functional for a while, presentable at first, then gradually unstable. Home goods followed the same logic. Storage bins crack more easily. Kitchen tools feel lighter. Hinges, handles, and moving parts wear out sooner. The important thing to notice is the economic philosophy behind it. Replaceability has become more normal than durability. Products are increasingly designed to move through homes, not stay in them. That creates recurring demand, but it also transfers more inconvenience and risk onto the consumer. So if something feels flimsier than it would have a decade or two ago, that reaction is not irrational. It is often an accurate reading of a market that has grown more comfortable selling temporary usefulness instead of lasting reliability. Food quality changed too, and in some ways this is the most subtle category because people often sense the downgrade emotionally before they can name it technically. Coffee tastes weaker even when the brand looks familiar. Frozen meals feel smaller and less satisfying. A product you used to buy for convenience now feels padded with filler ingredients, cheaper oils, more stabilizers, and less of the part you actually wanted. The shift may show up in texture, flavor, satiety, or portion size. Meat content falls. Sauces become thinner. Ingredients stretch further with lower-cost substitutes. The package image still shows abundance, but the experience at the table feels flatter. You finish eating and the reaction is not always dramatic disappointment. Sometimes it is just a quiet sense that something is off. That emotional recognition matters. Consumers often detect quality changes before they can explain them, because food is intimate. You know when your coffee no longer tastes as rich. You know when a frozen meal that used to feel complete now feels skimpy. You know when ingredients seem to be doing more visual work than nutritional or practical work. And once again, the control shift is awareness. Start treating familiar brands as current products, not remembered products. Loyalty built on old performance can keep people paying for a quality level that no longer exists. When the inside changes but the brand memory remains, the consumer is the one carrying outdated trust. By this point, a broader question starts to appear. Why does all of this create such constant frustration? Why do these small disappointments feel more exhausting than they should? Because this is not just about individual products. It is about trust. When basic household items become unreliable, people stop moving through ordinary shopping with confidence. They hesitate. They compare more. They second-guess purchases. They start wondering whether the next bottle, box, roll, shirt, appliance, or food item will actually perform the way it appears to promise. That creates mental fatigue. Not dramatic panic, just a steady background drain. Replacing things earlier than expected takes time. Testing brands takes attention. Cleaning up after weak products creates irritation. And when this keeps happening across multiple categories, the ordinary act of maintaining a home starts to feel heavier than it should. So here is the question worth asking yourself right now. How many everyday products in your home now feel temporary? Once you ask that honestly, a pattern comes into focus. This is not one bad company or one disappointing purchase. It is a broader shift in how products are designed, marketed, and tolerated. And if you have noticed it, that does not make you negative or hard to please. It means your standards are still connected to function. You still expect products to do what they are supposed to do. That matters, because the people who recognize the pattern earliest are usually the ones best able to protect their money from it. So why did companies do this? In most cases, the answer is not mysterious. It is pressure. Global competition increased. Manufacturing costs rose. Raw materials became more expensive. Shipping and supply chains became less predictable. Shareholders expected margins. Retailers pushed for price points consumers would still accept. And companies learned a powerful lesson. Many consumers notice a direct price increase faster than a quiet decline in quality. If a company raises the price sharply, shoppers react immediately. If it uses slightly less material, slightly weaker ingredients, a slightly diluted formula, or a slightly cheaper internal component, the reaction is slower. Some people notice, some do not. Many adapt. That makes hidden quality reduction an appealing strategy in a highly competitive environment. In other words, it is often easier to preserve the illusion of value than to preserve the value itself. Keep the branding. Keep the shelf presence. Keep the package confidence. Change the inside just enough to protect margins without triggering immediate rejection. That is why so many consumers had the same unsettling experience at roughly the same time. The changes were gradual, but the pattern was widespread. And once several industries discover the same tactic works, it spreads. Less material, lower concentration, thinner construction, smaller portions, more filler, shorter lifespan, same familiar face. None of that means every company is identical or every product is bad, but it does explain why disappointment now feels system-wide rather than isolated. The logic behind the downgrade is consistent, even when the products are very different. Older Americans often notice this more clearly, and that is not because they complain more. It is because they have something many younger consumers do not, a longer baseline. They remember when ordinary goods were built in a different environment, with different expectations. They remember small appliances that lasted, clothing with more substance, paper products that performed better, furniture that felt heavier because it actually was heavier. That memory creates a real comparison point. Without that comparison, a younger shopper may assume current quality is normal. But for someone who has seen the earlier version of the market, the decline is easier to detect. What feels ordinary to one generation may feel noticeably downgraded to another. That perspective is valuable. It helps separate nostalgia from observation. This is not about claiming the past was perfect. It was not. It is about recognizing that many baseline consumer products really were built with more durability and more usable material than their modern counterparts. So if you have felt this shift more strongly with age, the explanation is simple. You are not imagining the difference. You remember the original standard. And in a market that benefits when consumers forget, memory becomes a form of protection. That leads to one of the most important parts of this entire pattern: the financial trap of cheap products. A lower quality item often looks affordable in the moment because the sticker price appears manageable. But if it tears sooner, empties faster, breaks earlier, shrinks more, or underperforms every time you use it, the true cost does not stay low. It multiplies. A weak trash bag leads to extra bags. Thin paper products lead to heavier usage. Diluted cleaning formulas lead to faster repurchase. Cheap clothing leads to faster replacement. Semi-disposable appliances force another purchase long before the first one should have been finished. A lower-cost food product with less substance may leave people less satisfied and reaching for more around it. This is how poor quality quietly drains households. Not usually in one dramatic expense, but through repetition. The consumer thinks they are controlling costs because each individual item seems affordable, but the replacement cycle keeps reopening the expense. That is why the modern trap is not always high price. Sometimes it is low price paired with low endurance, and that combination can be more damaging over time because it disguises itself as value. The practical advantage of recognizing this is that you stop judging products by purchase moment alone. You start asking a better question. What will this cost me in repeat use, repeat frustration, and repeat replacement? That question does not make every choice easy, but it immediately gives you more control than the packaging wants you to have. Underneath all of this is a deeper psychological shift. People increasingly feel surrounded by products designed to look good briefly, instead of performing reliably for a long time. That changes more than shopping behavior. It changes emotional posture. Confidence becomes caution. Familiarity becomes skepticism. Routine purchases start carrying a little more doubt. And that doubt matters because home life depends on trust in ordinary things. You do not want to negotiate mentally with every paper product, every appliance, every food package, every piece of clothing, every basic home item. But when enough products become temporary, that negotiation becomes part of daily life. This is why the frustration can feel larger than the individual item that caused it. A torn bag is not just a torn bag. A weak cleaner is not just a weak cleaner. A shrinking shirt is not just a shrinking shirt. Each one reinforces the same message. What looks dependable may no longer be dependable. Once that message repeats often enough, people do not just lose trust in brands. They lose ease. Ordinary life becomes less smooth, less certain, and more guarded than it should be. But there is also a calmer way to look at this. Once you recognize that the pattern is real, you stop personalizing every disappointment. You stop assuming you are remembering wrong or expecting too much. And from there, your decisions get sharper. You compare more carefully. You watch for performance, not just presentation. You pay attention to how fast products move through your home, how often they fail, and whether a lower price is actually giving you less control in the long run. That is the real shift here. Not nostalgia, not panic. Pattern recognition. Many household products genuinely changed. They became thinner, weaker, smaller, more diluted, less durable, and more replaceable. The modern retail economy often rewards lower production cost, polished presentation, and faster replacement cycles more than durability, repairability, or long-term trust. And when ordinary products stop lasting, people quietly lose confidence in everyday life itself. Not all at once. Just little by little, purchase by purchase, failure by failure. But once you see the full pattern, those disappointments stop feeling random. You can read them more clearly. You can respond more calmly. And you can protect your money by refusing to confuse familiar packaging with real value. If this shift has felt familiar to you, you are not imagining it. More importantly, you are not alone in it. You are seeing a market pattern that many people sense but struggle to name. And the more clearly you can name it, the harder it becomes for that pattern to quietly control what enters your home.